A man worth $10 billion disguised in clothes from a thrift store sits alone in the most expensive restaurant he owns. He's not here for the food. He's hunting for something money can't buy: honesty. But in a world of fake smiles and calculated kindness, his search feels hopeless. He orders the $500 Emperor's cut steak, a silent test for the staff. The young waitress who serves him seems different. There's a quiet desperation in her eyes that cuts through his cynicism. As she clears his plate, her hand trembles as she slips a folded napkin towards him. He expects a phone number, a plea for cash. But when he opens it, 4 chilling words stop his heart and threaten to bring his entire empire crashing down. The weight of Jameson Blackwood's fortune was impossibly heavy. At 42, he commanded Blackwood Holdings, a sprawling global conglomerate. From his penthouse office above Chicago, he could manipulate markets with a single phone call. He was a king in a kingdom of glass and steel, and he was profoundly, achingly alone. The world he inhabited was curated. Every interaction was buffered by assistants, lawyers, and handlers. The people he met laughed at his jokes, even the bad ones. They agreed with his opinions, even the half-formed ones. He was surrounded by mirrors, each reflecting a carefully constructed image of the man they thought he wanted to be. The real Jameson, who had grown up in a small Ohio town with dreams of being an architect, had been lost somewhere along the climb. This evening's exercise was born from that loneliness. It was a ritual he performed every few months, a pilgrimage back to reality. He would shed the skin of Jameson Blackwood and don the shabby persona of Jim, a man adrift in the world. The clothes were carefully chosen from a second-hand store: a faded corduroy jacket, a plaid shirt that had seen better decades, and jeans soft with age. Scuffed. Work boots and a day's worth of stubble completed the transformation. He even wore thick, unflattering glasses. His destination was the Gilded Steer, the flagship steakhouse of his hospitality division. He had acquired the restaurant group 2 years ago, and while profit margins were excellent, he had never set foot in this location. His reports spoke of flawless service and record-breaking revenues. But reports were just numbers. They couldn't measure the soul of a place. Jameson wanted to see it for himself through the eyes of someone who didn't matter. The hostess, a statuesque blonde with a brittle smile, gave his attire a dismissive glance. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone implying he had wandered in by mistake. "A table for one." She hesitated. "Do you have a reservation?" "No. Is that a problem?" "We are typically fully booked. Let me see what I can do." After an exaggerated show of checking her tablet, she looked up. "I can seat you at a small table near the kitchen entrance." "It's all we have available." It was a classic brush-off, a table reserved for walk-ins deemed unworthy. "That's fine," Jameson said. He was deposited at a wobbly table tucked into an alcove. The swinging kitchen doors provided constant percussion of bangs and muffled shouts. It was the worst seat in the house. It was perfect. From his vantage point, he could observe the restaurant's machinery. He watched waiters move with predatory grace, their smiles calibrated to the perceived wealth of their tables. He saw the manager, Gregory Finch, schmoozing with what looked like city council members. Finch exuded oily charm that didn't reach his eyes. But the moment he turned away, the smile vanished, replaced by hawk-like vigilance. He barked sharp orders at staff who flinched and scurried away. Jameson had been nursing a glass of water for 10 minutes when a waitress approached his table. She was different from the others. While the rest had a hard, professional sheen, she seemed softer, almost fragile. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, with intelligent brown eyes and chestnut hair pulled back severely. Her uniform was neat, but showed signs of wear. What he noticed most was a faint tremor in her hand as she placed bread on his table. There were dark circles under her eyes, a weariness her polite smile couldn't conceal. "Good evening, sir," she said quietly. "My name is Rosemary, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I get you started with something to drink?" He deliberately ordered the cheapest beer on the menu, watching for any flicker of disappointment. He saw none. "Of course," she said with the same steady, pleasant tone. "I'll be right back." As she walked away, he noticed her shoes. They were standard black non-slips, but the soles were worn almost smooth, the leather cracked near the toes. They were the shoes of someone who spent countless hours on her feet, someone for whom a new pair was a luxury she couldn't afford. When she returned to take his food order, he looked up from the menu. "Yes, I think I'll have the Emperor's cut." Rosemary's professional composure almost cracked. The Emperor's cut was the most extravagant item on the menu, a 48-ounce porterhouse dry-aged for 90 days, served with truffle reduction. It cost $500. She glanced down at his scuffed boots, then back at his calm face. Her mind raced. Was this a joke? Her training screamed to get the manager, but her instincts told her to trust him. "An excellent choice, sir," she said, her voice even. "And how would you like that prepared?" "Medium rare," he replied, "and a glass of the Cheval Blanc 1998 to go with it." Now she was truly floored. The Cheval Blanc was over $2,000 a bottle. Even by the glass, it was a $300 proposition. Combined with the steak, this single diner at the worst table was about to run up a tab worth more than her monthly rent. "Right away, sir," she said, her voice betraying none of her inner turmoil. She walked away, heart pounding. She keyed the order into the POS system, her fingers trembling. The system automatically flagged the high-value order and sent an alert to the manager's terminal. Sure enough, Finch intercepted her near the wine station. "Vance," he hissed. "What the hell do you think you're doing? Table 32 just ordered the Emperor's cut and a glass of the 98 Cheval Blanc." "Yes, Mr. Finch. I just put the order in." "Are you insane? Did you see the guy? He looks like he crawled out of a homeless shelter. You didn't get a card from him first." "He didn't seem like the type to be joking, sir. I didn't want to insult a guest." "Insult a guest?" Finch scoffed. "He's insulting us by being here. When he dines and dashes, that $800 is coming out of your paycheck. Every last cent of your fabricated debt." He leaned closer, his breath sour. "You're already on thin ice with me. Don't make me push you off." Fear pierced through her. If this man couldn't pay, she would be ruined. The debt Finch held over her would become insurmountable. She would lose her job, and Kevin would lose his lifeline. But as she looked past Finch toward table 32, she saw the man watching them. He couldn't hear what was being said, but he could see the dynamic. He saw Finch's aggression and her fear, and he simply nodded. A slow, almost imperceptible gesture of acknowledgement. It was tiny, but it sent courage through her. He knew. He saw her. "I understand, Mr. Finch," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I will take full responsibility." Rosemary Vance moved through the controlled chaos of the Gilded Steer like a ghost. She was efficient and polite, but she kept part of herself locked away, a necessary act of self-preservation. Her younger brother Kevin was the center of her universe. At 17, he should have been worried about college lications. Instead, his life was a cycle of doctor's appointments and terrifying trips to the emergency room. He had a rare genetic disorder affecting his lungs. The treatments were experimental and astronomically expensive, and their insurance had long since hit its lifetime cap. Every dollar Rosie earned went into the bottomless pit of Kevin's medical bills. The job at the Gilded Steer paid better than any other service job she could get, but it came at a cost. Gregory Finch was a predator in a well-tailored suit. He had discovered a minor inventory discrepancy, a mistake Rosie made out of exhaustion. It was easily correctable, but in Finch's hands, it became a weapon. He had cornered her in his office, accused her of theft, and threatened to have her fired and blacklisted. Then he offered her a deal. She could work to pay off the loss, which he had inflated to $5,000. Her paychecks would be garnished, her tips monitored. She was his indentured servant. Worse still, Finch forced her to help him with the real books late at night. She had 2 years of community college accounting before Kevin's condition worsened. Finch used that knowledge, making her reconcile his fabricated invoices. She saw numbers that didn't add up, invoices from suppliers she'd never heard of, vast sums being funneled into accounts under shell corporations. She was trapped, a reluctant accomplice to crimes she was only beginning to understand. When she first saw the man in the corduroy jacket at table 32, her sympathy was immediate. The hostess had led him there with barely concealed sneer. The other waiters would likely ignore him. Rosie wasn't built that way. Her mother had taught her that a person's worth wasn't in their wallet, but in their character. As she went about her duties, she kept an eye on him. He wasn't on his phone or trying to catch anyone's eye. He was watching, his gaze sweeping the room with quiet, unnerving intelligence. There was a stillness about him, a self-possession that seemed at odds with his shabby appearance. The rhythm of din, near service pressed on. Rosie moved through it on autopilot while her mind raced, plotting. The man at table 32 was finishing his coffee. Time was running out. Her plan was both simple and terrifyingly risky. She couldn't speak openly, not with Finch's reptilian eyes constantly scanning. A whisper could be overheard. The note was her only option. During a brief lull, she slipped into the employee break room. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She grabbed a fresh linen napkin from the service stack. Her hand shook so badly she could barely hold the pen from her apron. She took a deep breath, trying to channel the quiet courage she'd seen in the stranger's eyes. She scribbled on the napkin, her handwriting tight and hurried. "They're watching you. The kitchen is not safe. Check the ledger in Finch's office. He's poisoning the supply chain." She carefully folded the napkin into a tight square and tucked it into her apron pocket. The feel of it against her leg was like holding a live coal. As she returned to his table for final clearing, her pulse throbbed in her ears. Finch was standing by the host station, his back to her. This was her chance. "Will there be anything else for you this evening, sir?" she asked, her voice miraculously steady. "No, thank you, Rosemary. The meal was exceptional," he said. His eyes, however, said something else entirely. They were focused, waiting. With practiced movements, she began gathering the coffee cup and water glass. As her right hand picked up the empty sugar caddy, her left slid the folded napkin from her pocket and placed it on the table, immediately covering it with the bill tray. The entire transaction took less than a second. She picked up the tray, the note now concealed beneath it, and turned to leave. But the man spoke again, his voice sharp enough to cut through the dining room's hum. "Wait." Rosie froze, her back to him. Air blood ran cold. Had he seen? Was he going to expose her? Slowly, she turned to face him. He was looking at the empty space on the table where the bill tray had been. He had seen her place the note and pick it back up, hidden under the tray. He had expected her to leave it. Her trick had been too clever. His eyes lifted to meet hers. There was no anger, only confusion and disappointment. Rosie's mind reeled. She had failed. In her attempt to be discreet, she had outsmarted herself. She stood there, trapped in the spotlight of his gaze, the damning napkin burning a hole in the tray she held. With courage she didn't know she possessed, she walked back to the table. Without a word, she tilted the tray just enough for the small white square to slide off and land silently on the polished wood. She placed the tray back down on top of the note, this time leaving it for him. "You forgot your tip," she whispered, the words barely audible. She turned and walked away, not daring to look back, her entire body trembling. She felt like she had just jumped from a plane without a parachute. Jameson Blackwood watched her retreat, his mind a whirlwind of confusion and sudden ice-cold clarity. He had seen the entire fumbled exchange, the initial slip, her panicked retrieval, and the final desperate deposit. Her whispered words, "You forgot your tip," were absurd. He had left no tip. He had paid the exact amount, a deliberate signal that he was not a typical customer. The note was the tip. The information was the currency. He waited until she had disappeared through the kitchen doors. He glanced toward Finch, who was now staring at his table with open suspicion. The charade was over. Jameson casually placed his hand over the bill tray, his fingers closing around the hidden napkin. He stood, putting on his threadbare jacket, gave Finch a slight nod, and walked toward the exit. Once outside in the cool night air, he leaned against the brick wall of the adjoining building. The sounds of traffic felt distant, muted. His heart was beating faster than it had, in years. He wasn't Jameson Blackwood, billionaire. He was just a man on a dark street holding a secret. He unfolded the napkin. The hastily scrawled words seemed to glow under the street lamp. "They're watching you. The kitchen is not safe. Check the ledger in Finch's office. He's poisoning the supply chain." Jameson read it once, then twice. This wasn't a plea for a better tip. It was a declaration of war. Poisoning the supply chain. The words were a punch to the gut. It was an attack on the Blackwood brand, on the very promise of quality he sold to the world. If it were true, it was cancer in his empire. His simple test for honesty had unearthed something far darker. The quiet waitress with worn-out shoes and terrified eyes hadn't just served him a meal. She had served him a conspiracy on a linen napkin, a mystery that stopped him cold and irrevocably changed the course of his night. He looked back at the warm golden light spilling from the restaurant windows. It no longer looked like a restaurant. It looked like a crime scene. The city air did little to clear Jameson's head. The cryptic message felt like a brand against his palm. His undercover mission had instantly morphed into high-stakes corporate espionage. The shift was jarring, but it ignited a part of him that had long been dormant, the ruthless, decisive strategist who had built his empire from the ground up. He found a quiet, dimly lit bar a few blocks away and took a booth in the back. He pulled out his burner phone, a simple, untraceable device he kept for excursions like this. He had one number programmed into it. The phone rang twice before a crisp, British-accented voice answered. "Yes?" "Arthur, it's me." There was a brief pause. Arthur Pendleton was more than Jameson's chief operating officer. He was his anchor, a man of impeccable logic and unwavering loyalty who had been with him since the early days. He was the only person who knew about Jameson's clandestine outings. "Jameson? Is everything all right? Your voice sounds—" "I'm fine," Jameson interrupted. "But something's happened at the Chicago Steer. The reports are lies, Arthur." He quickly recounted the evening's events. His disguise, the dismissive staff, the arrogant manager, Gregory Finch. He described the waitress Rosemary, her quiet dignity, her worn-out shoes, and her paradoxical order. Finally, he read the words from the napkin aloud. Silence hummed on the other end. Arthur processed information, dealt in facts and figures, not cryptic warnings from waitresses. "Poisoning the supply chain," Arthur repeated slowly. "That's a very specific and serious accusation. It could be slander from a disgruntled employee." She had fear in her eyes, Arthur, the kind that goes beyond a bad boss. Finch cornered her after she took my order. He was threatening her. She was terrified. But she still did this. Jameson stared at the napkin. "She risked everything to get this to me. People don't do that over a petty grievance." "Instinct is not evidence, Jameson," Arthur cautioned. "A direct accusation against a manager based on an anonymous note is problematic. Finch could sue for defamation." "I'm not going to accuse him. I'm going to investigate him," Jameson countered. "I need you to get me everything on Gregory Finch. Employment history, financial records, everything. But it has to be completely off the books. Use the external contractors we use for hostile acquisition due diligence. I want to know who this man is by sunrise." Consider it done, Arthur said, his tone shifting from skeptical to operational. What about the ledger she mentioned? I need to get my hands on it. Tonight, before he has a chance to suspect anything and destroy it. Jameson, you can't break into your own restaurant. It's reckless. We can arrange a surprise audit officially. No, Jameson insisted. An office. I'll audit gives him time to react, to hide things. I saw the way he was watching me when I left. He's already suspicious. If auditors show up tomorrow, he'll connect the dots. The element of surprise is our only advantage. A long, weary sigh traveled through the phone. This is why your father worried about you, Arthur said softly. You have an entire company for this, but you insist on fighting in the trenches yourself. My father also told me never to ask a man to do something I wasn't willing to do myself, Jameson retorted. Besides, who would suspect a man who looks like me of being a corporate raider? My disguise is the perfect cover. Arthur was quiet for a moment, weighing immense risks against potential disaster. All right, he said finally. But you are not going in alone. I have a contact in Chicago, a security specialist. Her name is Wren. Former MI6, specializes in non-destructive entry and data retrieval. I'll have her meet you. Send me your location. Good, Jameson said. Also, I need information on the waitress, Rosemary Vance. Find out everything. If she's telling the truth, she's in danger. If she's lying, I need to know why. I'm on it. Wren will contact you within the hour. Be careful, Jameson. This feels different. I know, Jameson said, looking at the whiskey he hadn't touched. That's what worries me. 45 minutes later, his phone vibrated. A text message appeared. Alley behind you. Black sedan, 2 minutes. Jameson paid for his drink and slipped out the back entrance. As promised, a nondescript black sedan pulled up silently. The back door opened. He got in. The woman in the driver's seat didn't turn around, watching him in the rear-view mirror. She was of indeterminate age, with sharp features and short dark hair. Her eyes were chips of ice. Arthur said you needed a ghost, she said, her voice a low, gravelly monotone. Ghosts are expensive. I can afford it, Jameson replied. So I hear, she said. I'm Wren. I've been briefed. You want to get into a manager's office at the Gilded Steer and access a ledger. Is it a physical book or on a computer? The note just said ledger. We have to assume it could be either or both. Amateur, Wren muttered, but not unkindly. Okay. The restaurant closes at midnight. Staff is out by 1 o'clock. Cleaning crew comes at 4 o'clock. That gives us a 3-hour window. The building has a state-of-the-art Blackwood security system. She glanced at him again. Ironic. Can you bypass it? I can bypass the Pentagon with a paperclip and a stick of gum, she said without bravado. But your problem isn't the building's main security. The manager's office will have its own system. Separate keypad, maybe motion sensor. And Finch himself. A man that crooked is paranoid. He might have his own cameras. What's the plan? Jameson asked. Simple, Wren said, putting the car in gear. You're going back in, but not as a customer. She reached into the passenger seat and pulled out a duffel bag. The cleaning company is called Sparkle Clean Solutions. Here's your new uniform. You're going to be my assistant. Try to look like you know how to hold a mop. By the time they arrived at a staging area, Arthur had worked his magic. He had hacked the cleaning company's schedule, adding 2 extra workers for tonight's shift. He had created employee profiles complete with names and social security numbers that would pass cursory checks. As Jameson changed into the gray janitor's jumpsuit, he felt the last vestiges of billionaire ego strip away. He was now Mike, a night shift cleaner. Wren handed him an ID badge. Remember, she said, we move with purpose. We don't linger. We don't make eye contact unless we have to. We are invisible. Once we're inside, I'll disable the internal security on Finch's office. You are my lookout. Your only job is TE. But watch the hallway. If you see anything, you tap your comms once. Don't speak, just tap. She handed him a tiny earpiece. As they drove toward the silent, darkened restaurant, Jameson's phone buzzed. It was a message from Arthur, a preliminary background file on Rosemary Vance. Jameson's blood ran cold. Rosemary Vance, 23. No criminal record. Dropped out of City College accounting program 2 years ago. Sole guardian of younger brother Kevin Vance, 17. Kevin suffers from cystic fibrosis, advanced stage. Medical bills exceed $300K annually. Insurance maxed out. Multiple outstanding loans in her name. Residence small apartment in low-income housing block. Her mother died 3 years ago. Father unknown. This wasn't a disgruntled employee. This was a young woman drowning. Her desperation wasn't for herself, it was for her brother. Her decision to write that note wasn't just brave. It was an act of profound, selfless love, and Finch, threatening her job, was holding a gun to her brother's head. The stakes had just become infinitely higher. This was no longer about his company. It was about justice for Rosie. Wren pulled the van emblazoned with the Sparkle Clean logo to the service entrance. "Showtime," she said. "Try not to get us caught, Billionaire." Disguised in janitorial uniforms, Jameson and Wren blended in with the night shift cleaning crew. While Jameson stood lookout, pushing a mop bucket to feign work, Wren focused on Finch's office. With unnerving calm, she looped the cheap wireless camera, disabled door and motion sensors, and brute-forced the keypad lock. In less than 2 minutes, the corrupt manager's sanctum was open. The office was a shrine to a small man's ego, but Wren ignored the decor. A quick search revealed no physical ledger. Her eyes, however, caught a hidden wall safe behind a row of unread management books. "There's a safe," she whispered into her comm. "Ms. Can't crack it quickly or quietly." Jameson's mind raced. Finch was arrogant. He'd use something personal. "What's on the walls?" "Photos. Finch with the mayor. Finch at golf. Finch with a little league team." "The team," Jameson pressed. "Is there a date on a trophy? A jersey number?" "Trophy says 2023. He's wearing jersey number 1. "Try the date from the trophy," Jameson instructed, betting on Finch's ego. A few beeps, a pause, and then a soft thunk. Wren was in. Inside was cash, a passport, and a single black leather-bound ledger. Wren worked with breathtaking speed, using a device to copy a hidden encrypted partition from Finch's computer. She used a camera pen to photograph every page of the ledger. With the download complete, she replaced the ledger, closed the safe, and wiped away any trace of her presence. They slipped out of the office and rejoined the cleaning crew, melting back into shadows and leaving the restaurant none the wiser. In the safety of Wren's vehicle, the data was uploaded to Arthur Pendleton's secure server. Arthur's team worked through the night, and what they unearthed was more horrific than Jameson could have imagined. The ledger and decrypted files painted a sickening picture. Finch wasn't just skimming profits. He was the local operative for a massive criminal enterprise. The prime organic meats on his invoices was a ghost company. The real supplier was Westland Meats, a processing plant shut down by the health department 6 months prior for extreme bacterial contamination. Finch was knowingly buying condemned toxic meat for almost nothing and serving it to patrons at a premium, funneling profits to an organized crime syndicate. The note hadn't been a metaphor. Finch was literally poisoning the supply chain. Just before dawn, Arthur called with the final chilling piece. "Jameson," he said, his voice heavy with disgust. "We found video files on the encrypted partition. It was his insurance." The files were short, secretly recorded clips from his office. They showed D. Rosie Vance, her face pale and strained, being explicitly threatened by Finch. He mentioned her brother's fragile health, her fabricated debt, and her lack of options. He had used her accounting background to force her to help reconcile his fraudulent books, believing this would implicate her and guarantee her silence. He had fatally underestimated her conscience. Jameson listened, a cold, hard fury settling in his bones. The full picture was now horrifyingly clear. Rosie wasn't a disgruntled employee. She was a cornered victim who had committed an act of astounding bravery. His mission was no longer about his brand's integrity. It was about getting justice for the young woman who had risked everything because it was the right thing to do. The game was over. It was time for the reckoning. The morning sun sliced through the blinds of Jameson Blackwood's penthouse, illuminating a man transformed. The shabby disguise was gone, replaced by a flawless charcoal suit that radiated authority. He was no longer Jim the Wanderer. He was the chairman of Blackwood Holdings, a man whose quiet intensity could command boardrooms and bend markets to his will. Arthur Pendleton stood beside him. "The FBI and FDA are ready to move on your signal, Jameson." "Not yet," Jameson said, his gaze fixed on the distant building housing the Gilded Steer. "Finch needs to see who he was dealing with, and this needs to be handled carefully for Rosie's sake. She's walking into a war zone today, and she's the hero of this story, not me." At 11:45 a.m., two imposing black SUVs pulled up to the restaurant, bringing pre-lunch preparations to a halt. Gregory Finch, expecting a celebrity, rushed to the door with his practiced smile ready. The smile vanished, replaced by shock, as Jameson Blackwood emerged. Finch knew the face of the company's reclusive owner instantly. Jameson strode through the door's flanked by Arthur and two men who were FBI agents. The staff froze. "Mr. Finch," Jameson's calm voice echoed in the room, "we have business to discuss." He walked to the small wobbly table near the kitchen, table 32. "I had a meal here last night. It was enlightening." The blood drained from Finch's face. He stared, connecting the powerful man before him with the shabby ghost from the previous night. "You," he stammered. Jameson's gaze swept over the staff and landed on Rosie Vance. She stood clutching a stack of menus, her face a mask of terror. She thought he was here to fire her, to ruin her. "My office," Finch managed to say, leading them down the hall. Inside the small room, Jameson went straight to the bookshelf. "A Little League trophy," he mused, gesturing toward the hidden safe. "Is that where you keep the proof of your partnership with Westland Meats?" Finch collapsed into his chair. "I don't know what you're talking about." Arthur stepped forward with a tablet displaying the evidence. The ledger, the fraudulent invoices, the shipping manifests from the condemned meat supplier. "We know everything, Gregory," Arthur said coldly. "The money laundering, the toxic meat, everything." He swiped to the final image, a still from a video of Finch threatening Rosie. "And we know you blackmailed one of your waitresses," Jameson said, his voice dropping to a furious whisper. "You used her sick brother to coerce her into helping you. That is the one thing I find most contemptible." "She helped," Finch blubbered, a pathetic attempt to share blame. "She cooked the books." Jameson opened the office door. "Rosie," he called, his voice now gentle. "Could you step in here?" Trembling, Rosie entered the office. "Rosie," Jameson said softly, "Mr. Finch claims you were his willing partner." She looked at the pathetic, sobbing man, then at the floor. "He's lying," she whispered, her voice gaining strength. "He threatened me. He threatened my brother." "His medical care. He made me do it." "I see," Jameson said, then nodded to the agents. "I believe you have what you need." As the agents cuffed Finch and led him away, stunned silence fell. Jameson turned to Rosie. "Last night, a person in this restaurant showed incredible integrity and bravery," he said, his voice carrying through the room. "That person risked everything to expose a crime, not for personal gain, but because it was right. That person was you, Rosie." Tears of relief streamed down her face. "Your fabricated debt is erased," Jameson continued. Furthermore, Blackwood Holdings is establishing a fully funded medical trust to cover all of your brother's care for life. A sob escaped Rosie's lips. And as for you, a person with your integrity is wasted waiting tables. I am creating a new corporate position, Director of Ethical Oversight. You'll run a new employee welfare foundation and oversee our supply chain. You'll answer directly to me. The room was silent as Rosie stared, unable to comprehend the sudden seismic shift in her life, from terrified waitress to powerful executive. Say you'll accept, Jameson urged kindly. Yes, she whispered, the word filled with disbelief and dawning joy. Yes, I accept. In the end, it wasn't the $500 steak or the billion-dollar empire that defined the story. It was a simple folded napkin and the incredible courage of a young woman who refused to let fear extinguish her integrity. Rosie Vance's story is a powerful reminder that heroes aren't always the ones in the spotlight. Sometimes they're the ones working a double shift with worn-out shoes, fighting silent battles we know nothing about. Jameson Blackwood set out to test the character of his employees and ended up having his own character redefined. Their story shows that one small act of bravery can unravel a web of deceit, and that true wealth lies not in what you owe, but in the positive impact you have on the lives of others.